Welcome to the show. Picture this, right? A brand new small electric SUV lands in Australia, and the first 1,000 cars are pitched at 36,990 drive away. Then after that, it's 35,990 plus on-road costs. Now in this market, that sort of number doesn't just get attention, it pokes the bear. Because once you slide under a heap of better-known rivals on price, people start asking the same question straight away. Not, oh, where do I sign? Nah, they ask, what's the catch? And fair enough too. When something turns up cheap, well-equipped, and looking pretty confident about itself, Australians have been trained, often correctly, to assume somebody's hidden the bill under the table. That's what makes this little J5 interesting. It's not trying to win the pub argument with some silly supercar number. It's not pretending to be a halo car. It's doing something a bit more practical and honestly a bit more dangerous to the established players. It's trying to be the car normal buyers actually consider, not dream about, consider. And that matters because most people shopping this end of the market aren't chasing bragging rights. They want enough range, enough room, enough features, and a monthly payment that doesn't make them feel crook. If a new badge can tick those boxes while looking modern and not stripped bare, it suddenly becomes a real problem for brands that have been charging extra just for being familiar. So the J5 turns up with that exact pitch, cheap enough to get noticed, loaded enough to feel generous, practical enough to sound sensible, and quietly ambitious because under all of that is a bigger play, not just buy this EV, but maybe trust this name. That second part, by the way, is the hard bit. Selling a cheap car is one thing, selling confidence is another. I always reckon this is where buyers need to slow down, just a touch. Price gets you through the door, spec sheets keep you there for 5 minutes. But ownership, the boring stuff, the real stuff, that's where the truth usually leaks out. So before we get too excited about a sharp sticker and a long features list, it's worth asking what this thing actually gives you day to day and where it starts showing its hand. And to be fair, there is quite a bit here that makes practical sense. Boot space is 384 litres, which is decent for a small SUV. Drop the rear seats and you get 1180 litres. Up front, there's a 35-litre frunk, which, look, it's not massive, but it's handy for charging cables or the sort of random bits that otherwise roll around the back annoying you. Then there are 26 storage cubbies through the cabin, 26. Which tells me someone sat down and thought, where do people actually put their stuff? That's useful design, not brochure theatre. Then you start stacking the comfort gear. Panoramic roof, heated seats, ventilated seats, a 360-degree camera. On paper, that's a pretty serious equipment list for the money. And this is where the J5 starts to make itself understood. It's not trying to dazzle you with one giant party trick. It's trying to win 1,000 little arguments inside your head. Wouldn't mind that camera. Seats would be nice in summer. Roof makes it feel airy. It's a nibble sort of strategy. For a buyer who uses a car as a tool, school run, work commute, shopping, the weekend run across town, that can be more persuasive than a headline figure. I mean, you don't sit in your 0 to 100 time, you sit in the seat. You stare at the screens. You chuck prams, bags, cables, takeaway, footy gear and all the rest into the holes and trays. Everyday usefulness is where cheap cars either become lovable or become exhausting. Now this is where I get a bit picky. The cabin leans heavily into screens. You've got a 13.2-inch center touchscreen and an 8.9-inch digital instrument display. And yes, that all sounds modern. It looks modern too. But I'll tell you straight, touchscreen-heavy interiors can be a pain in the backside when you're actually driving. Not in the car park, not in the showroom with the aircon humming and a salesman hovering nearby. I mean on a bumpy road with sun glare, trying to do one simple thing without taking your eyes off traffic. Apparently the car industry decided the humble button was just too effective, too easy, too cheap. Couldn't have that. So now half the time you're poking at glass trying to adjust something that used to be handled by muscle memory, and that matters more than people admit because physical controls are not nostalgia, they're usability. They let you make a change by feel quickly without turning a basic task into a mini admin exercise. That doesn't mean screens are bad, not exactly, more like they need restraint. A big center display can be excellent for camera views, menus, energy data, all that sort of thing. But when too much of the daily stuff gets buried in there, you feel it, especially after the honeymoon wears off. The first week you think, gee, this is flash. By month 3, you're muttering at it in traffic. Very different experience, same screen. And while we're in the cabin experience, I've got to mention regen braking. I actually don't mind one-pedal style driving when it's tuned properly. Around town, beauty, smooth, predictable, easy to learn. But when it's not quite right, it can feel all or nothing, like the car's either coasting or trying to throw the anchor out. That sort of jerky response gets old fast, especially if you're carrying passengers who didn't sign up for the nodding dog routine. So that's the split with this thing. The packaging is clever, the equipment is generous, the practical thinking is there. But the more digital, more software-led bits, that's where a newcomer can give itself away, because buyers are pretty forgiving of a cheap car having less. They are much less forgiving of a cheap car making basic daily interactions harder than they need to be. Underneath all that, the actual EV hardware is respectable. You're looking at 155 kilowatts and 288 newton meters of torque, 0 to 100 in 7.7 seconds. So again, not a rocket ship, but absolutely enough for what this car is trying to be. That's brisk in the real world. More importantly, it means merging, overtaking, and darting through a gap that doesn't need a written application and 3 business days' notice. Efficiency is claimed at 14.3 kilowatts per 100 kilometers, with a 402 kilometer worldwide harmonized light vehicle test procedure range. Now, as always, range claims are range claims. WLTP is useful as a comparison tool, not a promise from the universe. Weather matters, speed matters, hills matter. Your right foot matters more than most people want to admit. But if you're looking at the numbers on paper, 402 kilometers is enough to place the J5 where many suburban buyers will say, yeah, okay, that works for me. Charging matters too, and the DC fast charging claim is 130 kilowatts. That's the sort of figure that says this car isn't just meant to potter around the neighborhood forever. It's meant to at least look road trip capable, or at minimum not make occasional longer runs feel like a punishment. Again, practical, not heroic. There's a pattern here. But here's where the conversation gets serious. Hardware is the easy part to list. Ownership confidence is the hard part to earn. On paper, there's a long safety list. On paper, there's an 8-year warranty. Those things matter. They absolutely do. If you're spending real money, you want cover and you want the active safety stuff modern buyers expect. But there's no ANCAP rating yet. And when a badge is still new to a lot of Australians, on paper, only takes you so far. The obvious pushback is, yeah, but plenty of cars launch before every rating is finalised, and a long warranty shows confidence. True, fair point. I'm not dismissing either. An 8-year warranty is a strong statement. It says, we know trust is the job, but a warranty is only as comforting as the support network and follow through behind it. If something goes wrong, and eventually something always does, even on good cars, who answers the phone? How quickly do parts show up? How painful is the process? That's the real ownership test. And this is where being a newish name cuts both ways. The upside is they come in hungry, they sharpen the pricing, load up the spec, and try harder to impress because they have to. The downside is you, the buyer, are part of the proving ground. You're not just buying a car. You're buying into the promise that the local operation will mature properly, support properly, and still make sense a few years down the track. There's also a bigger plan forming here. By March 2026, the range was due to expand with hybrid and petrol versions. That tells you this isn't being treated like a one-off curiosity. It's a brand trying to plant roots, broaden the showroom, and give itself more chances to be seen as normal rather than novel. And honestly, that matters, because mainstream success in Australia usually doesn't come from one clever product. It comes from showing up again and again in enough shapes and prices that people stop asking who you are. So if you're a buyer looking at this thing, the question isn't really whether the J5 has enough stuff. It does. It isn't whether the numbers are competitive. They are. The real question is whether the cheap entry price, the generous features, the decent EV claims, and that long warranty add up to a genuine bargain, or whether they're the opening offer in a longer trust exercise. And I reckon that's the part worth sitting with. Because every established brand was once a stranger. Every familiar badge had a first buyer who took a punt. Sometimes that buyer looks clever. Sometimes they become the cautionary tale everybody else quotes at dinners for 5 years. The J5 feels like it understands what ordinary Australians want. The only question now is whether it understands what they remember. And that brings us to a close to another episode for the VIN report.